Ladies and gentlemen, today we delve into the history and significance of one of China's most mysterious and tightly controlled prisons, Qincheng Prison. This facility, hidden in the mountains north of Beijing, is not just an ordinary prison. It is a fortress of secrecy, a place where some of China's most powerful and influential individuals have been confined, often disappearing from public life without a trace. Qincheng Prison has played a crucial role in China's political landscape for more than 6 decades. It has served as a holding ground for high-profile prisoners, including former government officials, intellectuals, and dissidents. Unlike other prisons in China that operate under the Ministry of Justice, Qincheng is directly managed by the Ministry of Public Security. This distinction is important because it signifies a level of control and confidentiality far beyond that of ordinary detention centers. What makes Qincheng unique is its purpose. It is not just a place to imprison criminals, but a tool of political power. Many of those who enter its heavily guarded walls are not ordinary offenders, but individuals who were once at the heights of authority before falling from grace. Their imprisonment is often not just about justice, but about eliminating threats to the ruling party, maintaining order, and reinforcing control. The prison itself is built like a fortress. Surrounded by tall walls, heavily monitored by security personnel, and outfitted with state-of-the-art surveillance equipment, Qincheng is designed to ensure that those who are sent there remain completely cut off from the outside world. Reports suggest that the prison has separate sections for different classes of prisoners, some living in near-total isolation while others, particularly those of high rank, may receive slightly better treatment. Throughout its history, Qincheng Prison has been associated with political purges, ideological crackdowns, and power struggles within the Chinese government. During the Cultural Revolution, many former Communist Party officials and intellectuals were detained there, accused of betraying the party or failing to adhere to Mao Zedong's radical policies. Even in more recent times, the prison has continued to serve as a destination for those who have fallen out of favor with the Chinese government, particularly in high-profile corruption cases. The secrecy surrounding Qincheng Prison makes it difficult to get an accurate picture of what truly happens inside. The Chinese government rarely provides detailed information about its operations, and many former prisoners are either unwilling or unable to speak openly about their experiences. However, based on the limited accounts that have emerged, it is clear that Qincheng is not just a detention center. It is a symbol of power, fear, and the ability of the state to silence those who challenge it. Qincheng Prison was constructed in 1958, during a pivotal period in China's history. This was the height of Chairman Mao Zedong's rule, a time when the Chinese Communist Party was tightening its grip on power and eliminating any perceived threats to its authority. The prison was not an ordinary detention facility. It was built with a specific purpose: to house high-ranking officials, intellectuals, and political dissidents who had fallen out of favor with the Communist Party. What makes Qincheng Prison even more significant is that it was built with the assistance of the Soviet Union. During the 1950s, China and the USSR were still allies under the banner of communism, and the Soviets provided technical expertise in constructing this high-security facility. It was designed to be China's most secure prison, with state-of-the-art security measures, thick reinforced walls, heavily guarded corridors, and restricted access to the outside world. The Soviets had already built similar prisons for political detainees, and their influence shaped the architecture and operational structure of Qincheng Prison. The timing of Qincheng's construction was no coincidence. By 1958, Mao was launching the Great Leap Forward, an ambitious but disastrous campaign to rapidly industrialize China and collectivize agriculture. This period also marked an increasing crackdown on political opposition, as Mao and the Communist Party sought to eliminate counter-revolutionaries, intellectuals, and officials who were seen as threats. Qincheng Prison quickly became a key tool in suppressing dissent and enforcing political loyalty. Unlike most Chinese prisons, which were overseen by the Ministry of Justice, Qincheng was placed under the control of the Ministry of Public Security. This meant that it was directly tied to the government's law enforcement and intelligence agencies, making it more than just a prison. It was a political weapon. Individuals sent to Qincheng were often not just criminals in the traditional sense, but people accused of political crimes, such as speaking against the government, failing to follow party doctrine, or being suspected of disloyalty. Since its construction, Qincheng Prison has remained shrouded in secrecy. It was built in a remote mountainous region north of Beijing, far from prying eyes. Unlike most prisons, which have some level of public visibility, Qincheng was deliberately hidden from the public. Even today, little information is officially released about its exact layout, the number of prisoners held there, or the conditions inside. The influence of the Soviet Union on Qincheng's design was significant, but ironically, just a few years after its construction, relations between China and the USSR began to deteriorate. By the early 1960s, the Sino-Soviet split had begun, and China distanced itself from Soviet influence. However, Qincheng Prison remained, serving its purpose as China's most elite and secretive prison for political figures and dissidents. For over 6 decades, this prison has stood as a symbol of political control and state power, its very existence a reminder that in China, falling out of favor with a communist party can lead to complete disappearance behind the walls of Qincheng Prison. Qincheng Prison is not just any prison. It is China's only maximum security facility, specifically designed to hold the country's most politically sensitive prisoners. Unlike regular prisons, which house common criminals, Qincheng is a fortress of secrecy, where high-ranking officials, political dissidents, and influential figures are detained under the strictest surveillance and control. The prison was built with high-level security in mind, ensuring that those who are sent there never escape and rarely communicate with the outside world. The facility is located in a secluded mountainous region north of Beijing, deliberately chosen to make escape nearly impossible. Thick concrete walls, barbed wire fences, and an elaborate surveillance system ensure that every move within the prison is monitored. Guards patrol the area day and night, and every inmate is under constant supervision. One of the defining features of Qincheng Prison is its solitary confinement system. Most prisoners are housed alone in individual cells, minimizing the possibility of interaction or the exchange of information. The cells are designed in a way that prevents inmates from seeing or hearing other prisoners. These measures ensure that political detainees remain isolated, unable to influence or organize resistance even from behind bars. Security measures inside the prison are exceptionally strict. Unlike ordinary prisons, where inmates have access to recreational activities, visits from family members, and letters from the outside world, Qincheng severely restricts communication. Many prisoners are not allowed to receive visitors or communicate with their families. Letters and messages are heavily censored, and in some cases, prisoners are completely cut off from the outside world. This level of secrecy and isolation reinforces the idea that once someone enters Qincheng Prison, they may never be heard from again. The prison is designed to accommodate different levels of detainees, with some prisoners receiving harsher treatment than others. Ordinary political detainees, such as intellectuals, writers, and lower-ranking officials, are often kept in small, bare cells with limited privileges. However, high-ranking officials who have fallen from power but still hold some value to the government may be placed in slightly better conditions. Some reports suggest that these influential prisoners have received better food, access to reading materials, and even medical care, but always under tight surveillance. Qincheng Prison is also unique in that it is not governed by the Ministry of Justice, like most other Chinese prisons. Instead, it falls under the direct control of the Ministry of Public Security, which means it is linked to China's law enforcement and intelligence agencies. This distinction is important because it shows that Qincheng is not just a place for punishing criminals, but a facility used for controlling political figures, enforcing loyalty, and silencing dissent. For decades, Qincheng Prison has been at the center of China's political purges and anti-corruption campaigns. During the Cultural Revolution, it housed former Communist Party leaders, intellectuals, and officials who were accused of being enemies of the state. In more recent years, it has become a destination for corrupt officials who have fallen out of favor with the ruling party. The prison's role in maintaining political discipline cannot be overstated. It is a place where those who once held power are stripped of everything and confined in total isolation. Qincheng Prison is unique among Chinese detention facilities because it is not managed by the Ministry of Justice, like most other prisons in the country. Instead, it falls under the direct control of the Ministry of Public Security, NPS, the powerful government body responsible for law enforcement, domestic intelligence, and maintaining internal security in China. This distinction is crucial because it highlights the prison's special role. It is not just a correctional facility for criminals, but a highly classified institution used to detain individuals who are considered political threats. The Ministry of Public Security operates as a central pillar of China's security apparatus, overseeing policing, counterintelligence, and the suppression of political dissent. By placing Qincheng Prison under its control, the Chinese government ensures that the prison is not subject to the usual legal oversight that applies to other correctional facilities. This gives authorities greater discretion over who is detained, how they are treated, and what information about them is shared with the outside world. Unlike typical prisons, where detainees go through a standard judicial process, many of those sent to Qincheng Prison are not ordinary criminals. Instead, they are often individuals who have been purged from the Communist Party, accused of political crimes, or targeted in high-profile anti-corruption campaigns. The Ministry of Public Security has broad powers to detain individuals indefinitely, sometimes without formal charges or a public trial. This allows the government to silence critics, eliminate political opponents, and maintain strict control over the ruling party's inner workings. The secrecy surrounding Qincheng Prison is largely due to its direct management by public security forces. Unlike other prisons that may allow family visits, legal representation, or some level of public record-keeping, Qincheng operates in near-total isolation from external scrutiny. Even family members of detainees struggle to obtain information about their loved ones, as the Ministry of Public Security enforces strict confidentiality rules. In many cases, prisoners held at Qincheng are not officially listed in public records, making their status unknown to the outside world. Furthermore, Qincheng Prison serves as an extension of China's broader intelligence and security network. Many of its detainees are former high-ranking government officials, military officers, and influential political figures who possess valuable information. Because of this, the Ministry of Public Security may use covert interrogation methods to extract intelligence from prisoners, ensuring that they remain under strict state supervision. Some former detainees have reported being subjected to psychological pressure, extended solitary confinement, and round-the-clock surveillance as part of their imprisonment. Another key aspect of Qincheng's management under the Ministry of Public Security is the differentiated treatment of prisoners. While many detainees are kept in harsh, isolating conditions, some high-ranking officials, especially those who still hold strategic importance, are provided with relatively better living conditions. Reports suggest that certain influential prisoners are given access to special meals, books, and even private quarters, although they are still under constant monitoring. This selective treatment reflects the political nature of the prison. Rather than being a purely punitive facility, it is also a place where power dynamics continue to play out even behind bars. Ultimately, Qincheng Prison's direct control by the Ministry of Public Security ensures that it remains a powerful tool for political suppression and governance. It is not just a place of confinement, but a highly secretive institution where the Chinese state exerts control over individuals who once held influence but have now been deemed threats to the ruling order. Qincheng Prison is not a place for ordinary criminals. Unlike other prisons in China, which house common offenders such as thieves, fraudsters, or violent criminals, Qincheng is reserved exclusively for high-profile detainees, individuals who were once powerful but later became enemies of the state. Over the decades, this prison has held some of the most influential political figures, government officials, military leaders, and intellectuals in Chinese history. Many of the prisoners in Qincheng were once at the heart of China's leadership, holding positions of great authority before they fell from favor. Some were Communist Party officials accused of corruption, while others were intellectuals and scholars who spoke against government policies. Some were generals or high-ranking officers who lost internal power struggles, and others were simply people who became political scapegoats during times of upheaval. One of the most infamous periods in Qincheng's history was during the Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 1976, a time when Chairman Mao Zedong's radical policies led to mass purges. During this time, many of Mao's former allies, including high-ranking Communist Party members and military officials, were suddenly labeled as counter-revolutionaries and imprisoned at Qincheng. Some of these individuals had once fought alongside Mao during the Chinese Civil War, only to be branded as traitors and locked away when political tides shifted. In the decades that followed, Qincheng continued to serve as a political prison for fallen leaders and influential figures. During the 1980s and 1990s, it became a detention center for corrupt officials as China's leadership began cracking down on internal corruption. Many former government ministers, provincial leaders, and business tycoons who were convicted of financial crimes or abuse of power found themselves locked behind Qincheng's high walls. Some of these individuals had been powerful players in China's economic reforms, but when they were accused of wrongdoing, they were swiftly removed from public life and placed under maximum security detention. Qincheng Prison has also been used to hold political dissidents and intellectuals who oppose the government's policies. In various periods of modern Chinese history, writers, scholars, and activists who spoke out against censorship, human rights violations, or government oppression were sent to Qincheng. Unlike the corrupt officials who might still receive some privileges inside, these prisoners were often kept in harsh solitary confinement, denied access to legal representation, and subjected to psychological pressure and interrogations. One of the most striking aspects of Qincheng is that the fate of its prisoners is often unknown. Unlike in regular prisons, where inmates serve a fixed sentence and are eventually released, detainees in Qincheng often disappear from public records, and their imprisonment can last indefinitely. Some are quietly released years later, while others are never seen again. The secrecy surrounding the prison means that there is very little public knowledge about who is inside, how they are treated, or what eventually happens to them. Over time, Qincheng has become a symbol of political survival and downfall. For those in power, it serves as a constant reminder that no one is truly safe from internal purges. Even the most influential figures can find themselves behind its walls if they lose favor with the ruling elite. This has made Qincheng not just a prison, but a powerful instrument of political control, ensuring that those who are perceived as threats to the Communist Party's authority are removed from society and locked away in silence. Qincheng Prison has never been just a place of incarceration. It is a symbol of political purges, a facility used by the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, to eliminate rivals, punish disloyalty, and enforce ideological purity. For decades, this prison has played a crucial role in China's internal power struggles, serving as the final destination for those who once held high-ranking positions but later found themselves on the wrong side of history. Throughout China's modern history, political purges have been a recurring theme, and Qincheng Prison has been at the center of many of them. A purge is not just about removing someone from office. It is about erasing their influence, destroying their reputation, and ensuring that they never pose a threat again. Sending a disgraced official or intellectual to Qincheng is often the ultimate punishment, signaling their complete fall from grace. One of the most infamous periods of political purges in China was the Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 1976. During this time, Chairman Mao Zedong launched a radical campaign to purge capitalist, traditional, and counter-revolutionary elements from Chinese society. The movement quickly turned into a political witch hunt, where even high-ranking Communist Party members were accused of being enemies of the revolution. Qincheng became overflowing with former party elites, military officials, and intellectuals, many of whom had once been loyal to Mao but were suddenly branded as traitors. During this period, thousands of officials and scholars were arrested and sent to Qincheng under accusations of being rightists or bourgeois elements. Many of these individuals had dedicated their lives to the Communist Party, only to be turned into prisoners overnight. Some were subjected to brutal interrogations, while others were kept in isolation for years without trial. The pattern of using Qincheng Prison for political purges did not end with Mao's death. Under Deng Xiaoping, China's leadership shifted its focus from ideological purges to anti-corruption campaigns, but the strategy remained the same: eliminate rivals and consolidate power. Many government officials, business leaders, and military officers who were accused of corruption found themselves imprisoned in Qincheng. While some of these charges were legitimate, others were politically motivated, designed to remove figures who had become too powerful or opposed certain policies. Even in the 21st century, Qincheng continues to serve as a silent weapon in China's political battles. Under Xi Jinping, China has witnessed one of the largest anti-corruption crackdowns in its history. Thousands of officials have been investigated, and many high-ranking figures have been sent to Qincheng. While the official reason for their imprisonment is corruption, many observers believe that these purges also serve to eliminate potential challengers to Xi's rule. What makes Qincheng so significant in these political purges is not just the act of imprisonment itself, but the fear it creates among those still in power. Every official in China is aware of the prison's existence, and its name alone serves as a constant warning: fall out of line, and you could end up in Qincheng. This fear keeps party members obedient, discouraging any dissent or challenge to the leadership. Another key aspect of these purges is how they erase individuals from public life. Once a person is sent to Qincheng, their name is removed from official records, their past achievements are ignored, and their reputation is permanently tainted. In some cases, their families also face social and political repercussions, further ensuring that no one dares to question the system. Over the years, Qincheng has become more than just a prison. It is a symbol of absolute state power, a place where careers, reputations, and sometimes even lives are destroyed. It is a tool of fear, discipline, and control, ensuring that no one within the Chinese Communist Party ever feels too secure in their position. Qincheng Prison operates under a veil of extreme secrecy and isolation, making it one of the most mysterious and least accessible prisons in the world. Unlike ordinary prisons, where inmates' records, trial details, and sentences are often made public, Qincheng functions in near total obscurity, with little to no official acknowledgement of who is held there, how they are treated, or what ultimately happens to them. From the moment a prisoner enters Qincheng, they disappear from public life. Their name may be removed from government records, their photos erased from historical archives, and their past achievements ignored as if they never existed. This level of secrecy serves a critical purpose. It prevents public sympathy, silences any potential political influence, and ensures that the imprisoned individual has no way of defending themselves or shaping their own narrative. The prison's physical location adds to this isolation. Nestled deep in the mountains north of Beijing, Qincheng is far removed from urban centers. The rugged terrain surrounding the facility makes escape nearly impossible, and the tight security ensures that no unauthorized personnel can get close. Even satellite images and maps often show little detail of the area, reinforcing its status as a hidden fortress. Unlike other prisons that have designated visiting areas for family members and legal representatives, Qincheng severely restricts or outright bans outside contact. Many prisoners are not allowed to receive letters, phone calls, or any form of communication from the outside world. Security inside the prison is equally strict. Prisoners are kept under constant surveillance, often confined in small, windowless cells designed to minimize human contact. Guards and prison staff are trained to limit interactions, ensuring that detainees remain mentally and emotionally isolated. Reports from former inmates suggest that some prisoners spend years in complete solitude, with no knowledge of the outside world, no access to newspapers or books, and no sense of time. This psychological isolation is designed to break the spirit of detainees, making them less of a threat even if they are ever released. Even the guards and administrators working at Qincheng are bound by strict confidentiality agreements. They are not allowed to discuss their work outside the prison, and many are transferred after a few years to prevent them from forming relationships with prisoners or leaking information. Some reports indicate that even high-ranking officials within the Chinese government do not have full knowledge of who is imprisoned at Qincheng, further reinforcing the secrecy surrounding the facility. Unlike other prisons, where legal due process is often followed, Qincheng operates outside normal judicial transparency. Many detainees are held without clear charges, without public trials, and without a defined sentence. Some prisoners disappear for decades, while others are quietly released, only to live under house arrest or strict government monitoring for the rest of their lives. The lack of clear sentencing and legal oversight means that prisoners have no idea if they will ever be freed, adding to the psychological strain of imprisonment. The secrecy surrounding Qincheng also serves a political function. By keeping its prisoners hidden, the Chinese government avoids public outcry, international pressure, or domestic unrest. If the names of all detainees were made public, some might still have loyal supporters who could campaign for their release. By erasing these individuals from public consciousness, the government ensures that no organized resistance or sympathy movement can form. Over the years, various rumors and theories have emerged about what happens behind Qincheng's high walls, but very few verifiable accounts exist. Some former detainees have managed to speak about their experiences after their release, but even their testimonies are heavily censored and suppressed. The Chinese government rarely, if ever, acknowledges the prison's existence in detail, allowing speculation and fear to reinforce its ominous reputation. Through its strict isolation policies, information control, and lack of transparency, Qincheng Prison remains one of the most secretive political prisons in modern history, a place where those who were once powerful vanish and their voices are permanently silenced. Qincheng Prison is not just any detention facility. It is a maximum security fortress, designed to ensure that the high-profile figures incarcerated within its walls remain completely isolated and under strict control. Unlike regular prisons that focus on rehabilitation or reintegration, Qincheng's primary function is containment and suppression, ensuring that political prisoners, fallen officials, and influential detainees pose no further threat to the ruling government. The security measures at Qincheng are among the tightest in the world. The prison is surrounded by high concrete walls, reinforced with guard towers, and constantly monitored by an advanced surveillance system. There are armed guards stationed at multiple checkpoints, and only those with the highest security clearance are allowed entry. Even these individuals undergo thorough identity verification and physical searches before being permitted inside. Unlike other prisons where inmates might be moved between facilities or transferred depending on their sentences, Qincheng detainees are held in near total isolation for long periods, often indefinitely. Escape is nearly impossible, as the prison's geographic location, structural defenses, and layers of security personnel create an impenetrable barrier. Its secluded position in the mountains north of Beijing adds another layer of natural defense, making any unauthorized approach to the facility highly unlikely. Inside Qincheng, security protocols are just as strict. Every hallway, cell, and common area is monitored by cameras, ensuring that every move of every prisoner is recorded. Cell doors are electronically locked and can only be opened by authorized personnel. The walls are soundproof, preventing prisoners from communicating with each other, and many detainees are held in solitary confinement for years. The prison staff undergoes rigorous background checks and extensive training before being assigned to Qincheng. Guards are carefully selected based on loyalty, discipline, and their ability to follow strict orders without question. They are also regularly rotated out of duty to prevent them from forming relationships with inmates or developing sympathies that could lead to security breaches. Some reports indicate that even high-ranking prison officials do not have full knowledge of who is detained at Qincheng, as information is strictly compartmentalized. One of the most extreme security measures used at Qincheng is the restriction of all outside communication. Most prisoners are not allowed phone calls, letters, or visits, not even from their family members or legal representatives. For those who are permitted limited communication, their conversations are heavily monitored and censored. Detainees who were once powerful figures in the Chinese government, military, or business sector are cut off from their former networks, ensuring they cannot coordinate any efforts to regain influence or rally supporters. Inside the prison, the movement of prisoners is tightly controlled. Unlike in other facilities where inmates might have scheduled recreational time or communal meals, Qincheng detainees are often escorted by guards any time they leave their cells. Their daily routines are carefully managed, and they may be required to follow specific rules regarding exercise, hygiene, and even sleep schedules. Some former detainees have reported that they were forced to march or stand in certain positions for long periods as a method of both physical and psychological control. The security measures at Qincheng are not just about preventing escape. They are designed to break the prisoners mentally and emotionally. Many detainees have no access to the outside world, no knowledge of current events, and no clear idea of how long they will be imprisoned. This deliberate uncertainty is a powerful tool used to weaken their willpower, erase their influence, and ensure that they never challenge the system again. Even the prison's food and medical care are strictly controlled. Meals are carefully prepared, and some reports suggest that detainees receive different levels of treatment depending on their former status. High-ranking officials who still hold some strategic importance may be given better meals and medical attention, while those considered dangerous to the regime are kept under more severe conditions. With its multi-layered security, extreme isolation, and strict control over every aspect of a prisoner's life, Qincheng Prison functions as more than just a place of incarceration. It is a tool of absolute control, designed to keep the most politically sensitive individuals silenced and powerless for as long as the government sees fit. Life inside Qincheng Prison is not just about confinement. It is about total control over the body and mind. Unlike ordinary prisons, where inmates have some level of human interaction, structured routines, or the possibility of rehabilitation, Qincheng is designed to break prisoners both psychologically and physically. The conditions inside the prison are carefully engineered to ensure that detainees are stripped of their identity, influence, and willpower, reducing them to mere shadows of their former selves. One of the most defining aspects of Qincheng's psychological control is severe isolation. Many inmates are kept in solitary confinement for months or even years, locked inside small, windowless cells with no natural light or fresh air. The goal is to erase their sense of time and reality, making them feel completely cut off from the world. Some former detainees have reported that their only interaction is with the guards who bring them food or conduct interrogations. Even speaking is discouraged, and in some cases, prisoners are punished for attempting to communicate with others. This level of sensory deprivation has profound effects on mental health. Prisoners lose their sense of time, unsure whether it is day or night. The lack of stimulation can lead to hallucinations, depression, paranoia, and severe anxiety. Some detainees have reportedly lost their ability to speak coherently after years of silence, while others have experienced complete mental breakdowns. The Chinese government does not officially acknowledge these effects, but the stories from former inmates paint a harrowing picture of psychological torment. The physical conditions inside Qincheng vary, depending on the prisoner's status. Some high-profile detainees, especially those who still have political value, are held in relatively better conditions, with slightly more space, access to books, or even basic amenities. However, for those deemed enemies of the state or completely expendable, the conditions can be brutal. Cold, hard beds, minimal rations, and long periods of forced inactivity take a toll on the body. Food inside Qincheng is strictly controlled, and prisoners often receive bland, nutritionally minimal meals, just enough to keep them alive, but not enough to keep them strong. There are reports that some detainees receive better meals if they cooperate during interrogations, creating an added layer of psychological pressure. Others, especially those in solitary confinement, may be given food laced with sedatives to keep them weak and disoriented. Physical mistreatment is not openly documented, but accounts from former prisoners suggest that some forms of torture and coercion have been used, particularly during interrogations. Methods can include sleep deprivation, stress positions, and psychological manipulation rather than overt physical violence. Unlike in some other prisons where physical abuse is common, Qincheng's approach is more calculated and methodical, focusing on long-term psychological breakdown rather than immediate physical pain. Medical care in Qincheng is also a means of control rather than a humanitarian service. Prisoners may receive limited or delayed medical treatment, especially if they are seen as politically dangerous. Those who fall seriously ill may be left untreated for extended periods, while others are given only enough medical attention to keep them alive but suffering. There are also cases where prisoners have been denied medical care altogether, leading to severe health deterioration or even death. The most chilling aspect of life in Qincheng is the uncertainty. Prisoners do not know how long they will be there, whether they will ever be released, or what fate awaits them. Some are held for decades before being quietly freed under strict surveillance, while others disappear entirely, their names erased from public records. This creates a constant state of fear and hopelessness, as detainees are left in perpetual limbo, unable to control their fate. Through strict isolation, psychological pressure, controlled nutrition, limited medical care, and the constant fear of the unknown, Qincheng does not just imprison the body, it imprisons the mind, ensuring that those who enter its walls never leave as the same person they once were. At Qincheng Prison, imprisonment is not just about confinement, it is about control, coercion, and breaking the will of detainees. One of the most feared aspects of this high-security prison is its system of interrogations and forced confessions, designed to extract statements, whether true or fabricated, that serve the interests of the ruling government. Many prisoners, particularly high-ranking officials and political figures, find themselves subjected to relentless questioning, psychological manipulation, and immense pressure to confess to crimes they may not have committed. Interrogations at Qincheng do not follow the conventional legal process. There are no public trials, no defense lawyers, and no oversight. Instead, detainees are often held incommunicado for weeks or months before even being informed of the charges against them. Some prisoners are never formally charged at all, but are pressured into admitting guilt to justify their imprisonment. The interrogators are not ordinary police officers. They are highly trained specialists whose job is to break the prisoner mentally and emotionally, ensuring complete submission. One of the most common methods used at Qincheng is sleep deprivation. Prisoners may be kept awake for days or even weeks at a time, with bright lights shining in their cells 24/7, preventing them from resting. As exhaustion sets in, judgment becomes impaired, memory weakens, and resistance crumbles. Under such conditions, detainees often begin to doubt their own recollections and may even falsely confess to crimes just to make the torment stop. Another widely reported method is endless repetitive questioning. Prisoners may be asked the same questions over and over again for hours, sometimes days, without a break. The purpose of this technique is to break their mental defenses, confuse their sense of reality, and force them into contradicting themselves. Once a contradiction is found, interrogators use it as proof of dishonesty, pushing the detainee further into submission. In some cases, prisoners are subjected to prolonged isolation before interrogation. This serves to weaken their psychological resilience, making them more vulnerable to manipulation. Deprived of human contact, news, or any sense of time, prisoners begin to lose their grip on reality, making them more likely to accept whatever narrative is forced upon them. Forced confessions are a key part of the political process in China, often used to justify purges, eliminate rivals, and reinforce state narratives. Once a confession is extracted, whether true or not, it can be broadcast on state media, used in secret party trials, or held as leverage to control the individual even after release. High-profile figures who once held immense power are reduced to reading scripted statements, denouncing their past actions, and expressing remorse in front of cameras, knowing that refusing to comply could result in even harsher consequences. Some prisoners are given false promises during interrogations. They may be told that cooperating will lead to leniency, that their families will be spared, or that their sentence will be reduced if they sign a confession. In reality, once a confession is obtained, the government can do whatever it wants with the detainee, often ignoring any previous assurances. Physical abuse, while not always visible, has also been reported as a means of coercion. Some prisoners experience stress positions, where they are forced to stand or sit in uncomfortable positions for extended periods, leading to excruciating pain and physical exhaustion. Others are subjected to cold rooms, starvation, or exposure to harsh conditions as a way to weaken their bodies and minds before interrogation sessions. Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of interrogations at Qincheng is their unpredictability. Prisoners never know when they will be called in, how long the session will last, or what new accusations will be thrown at them. Some sessions last for hours or even days, with no food, water, or restroom breaks. The interrogators rotate in shifts, ensuring that the prisoner remains exhausted while the questioners remain fresh and alert. Even after a confession is obtained, the psychological pressure does not end. Some prisoners are forced to memorize and repeat their confessions multiple times, ensuring they can recall every detail precisely as their captors require. Others are kept under continuous monitoring, knowing that even the slightest deviation from their forced narrative could lead to further punishment. Through these methods, Qincheng Prison serves as more than just a place of detention. It is a machine of psychological warfare, systematically designed to erase resistance, extract confessions, and permanently destroy the will of those who once held power. Qincheng Prison is unlike any other detention facility in China. It is reserved for the most powerful, influential, and controversial figures who have fallen from grace. Over the years, it has housed a long list of high-profile prisoners, including disgraced politicians, former government officials, military generals, intellectuals, and even members of the Communist Party itself. Many of these individuals were once at the pinnacle of power, shaping policies and leading the country, only to find themselves behind bars, stripped of their influence, and silenced by the very system they once served. The list of notable detainees includes some of the most well-known names in Chinese political history, especially those who were accused of corruption, dissent, or opposing the ruling elite. Many of these figures were once key decision-makers, shaping China's domestic and foreign policies, but their imprisonment serves as a warning to others who might challenge the existing power structure. One of the most infamous categories of prisoners includes high-ranking Communist Party officials who were purged during China's many internal political struggles. Throughout the years, various leaders have launched anti-corruption campaigns and political purges, targeting rivals under the guise of rooting out corruption. These campaigns have sent numerous top-ranking officials to Qincheng, where they languish in isolation, their former power and prestige erased. Many of these officials were once highly respected within the government, holding positions as provincial governors, ministers, or even members of the Politburo Standing Committee. Some were known for challenging central policies, advocating for reforms, or simply being too influential, which made them threats to the ruling leadership. Their downfall often came swiftly and unexpectedly, with sudden arrests, secret trials, and harsh sentences. Once they were imprisoned in Qincheng, they became political ghosts, erased from public memory, their names removed from official records, and their past achievements ignored. Another significant group of prisoners consists of military leaders and generals who once commanded China's armed forces. The Chinese military, like the government, is highly centralized and tightly controlled, but power struggles and factionalism have led to periodic purges of military officials. Some generals have been accused of corruption, abuse of power, or disloyalty, but their real crime was often aligning with the wrong political faction. When leadership changes or power struggles intensify, even the highest-ranking officers can find themselves arrested, tried, and locked away in Qincheng. Intellectuals, writers, and pro-democracy activists have also found themselves imprisoned in Qincheng. China has a long history of suppressing political dissent, and those who speak out against the government, advocate for democracy, or criticize the Communist Party often face severe consequences. Some of these individuals were once respected academics, economists, or legal experts, but when their ideas clashed with state policies, they were swiftly silenced. Unlike corrupt officials or military leaders, who may still have political bargaining power, dissidents are often treated even more harshly, held in extreme isolation with no chance of rehabilitation or release. During times of political upheaval, Qincheng has also housed revolutionaries, reformists, and even former allies of the government who fell out of favor. The prison has seen key figures from Mao Zedong's era, individuals targeted during the Cultural Revolution, and those accused during the Tiananmen Square crackdown. Many of these prisoners were once loyal members of the party or government, but when the political tide shifted, they found themselves branded as traitors, locked away, and forgotten. One of the most notable patterns in Qincheng's history is how prisoners are treated based on their political value. Some high-profile detainees, especially those with lingering influence, are given better conditions, with access to books, slightly better meals, and occasional medical care. Others, particularly those who are considered dangerous to the regime, face harsh isolation, poor nutrition, and little to no communication with the outside world. For those imprisoned at Qincheng, there is often no clear path to release. Some prisoners serve life sentences, while others are quietly released after years of imprisonment, often under strict surveillance and house arrest. Some mysteriously disappear, their fate unknown to the public, while others die within the prison walls, their deaths rarely acknowledged by the government. The prison's history reflects China's internal power struggles, political shifts, and efforts to maintain control. Each high-profile prisoner serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that no one, no matter how powerful, is untouchable in the eyes of the ruling party. Qincheng Prison is not just a place of detention. It is a political instrument that has been used repeatedly throughout China's history to eliminate rivals, enforce loyalty, and consolidate power. While it is officially described as a high-security facility for the country's most dangerous criminals, the reality is far more complex. It is a place where the fate of China's elite is sealed, where once powerful figures are reduced to mere prisoners, and where the ruling government ensures that those who challenge authority are removed from both public life and historical memory. Political purges in China have been a defining feature of governance since the establishment of the People's Republic in 1949. Leaders at the top have continuously reshaped the political landscape through large-scale crackdowns on corruption, ideological dissent, or perceived disloyalty. While these purges are often justified as necessary to maintain order, stability, and party unity, they also serve as a way for those in power to eliminate threats, silence opposition, and send a chilling message to others. Qincheng Prison has played a central role in these purges, acting as the final destination for those who fall out of favor. One of the most infamous political purges in Chinese history was the Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 1976, during which many high-ranking Communist Party officials, intellectuals, and military leaders were accused of counter-revolutionary activities. Qincheng Prison became overflowing with political prisoners, many of whom were once respected members of the government or prominent figures in society. These individuals were often subjected to harsh interrogations, forced confessions, and extreme isolation, as the leadership sought to cleanse the party of those who were deemed ideologically impure. Similarly, during the anti-corruption campaigns launched by successive Chinese leaders, Qincheng has been used to imprison officials accused of abuse of power, embezzlement, or misconduct. While corruption has undoubtedly been a serious issue within the Chinese government, the selective nature of these campaigns suggests that they have also been used as a means of eliminating political opponents. Many of the individuals arrested and sent to Qincheng were not necessarily more corrupt than others. They were simply on the wrong side of a power struggle. Another example of Qincheng's role in political purges is its use during leadership transitions. Whenever there is a major shift in the upper ranks of the Communist Party, there is often a wave of arrests targeting those who were loyal to the previous administration. These arrests serve two purposes. They remove potential threats to the new leadership, and they send a clear signal that opposition will not be tolerated. Those who are sent to Qincheng disappear from public life, their legacies erased, their influence neutralized. Qincheng has also played a critical role in controlling dissent within the Chinese military. Since the government relies heavily on the loyalty of the armed forces, any sign of disobedience or factionalism is dealt with swiftly. High-ranking military officials who are seen as too independent, too ambitious, or too close to rival factions often find themselves arrested and locked away in Qincheng, ensuring that the military remains firmly under the control of the party. Perhaps one of the most chilling aspects of Qincheng's role in political purges is its ability to make people disappear, not just physically, but historically. Many of the high-profile prisoners who enter Qincheng are removed from official records, their names erased from books, their achievements ignored. In China, where the government controls the narrative, to be forgotten is often a fate worse than death. For those who are imprisoned, the purge does not end when they are locked behind bars. Many of them are subjected to years of psychological pressure, interrogations, and forced confessions. Even if they are eventually released, they are often kept under strict surveillance, barred from speaking publicly, and forced to live under permanent house arrest. Their families, too, may face persecution, ensuring that no one dares to challenge the government again. Through its strategic use of Qincheng Prison, the Chinese government has perfected a system of political survival, suppression, and control. By imprisoning former allies, rivals, and dissidents, the ruling leadership ensures that only the most loyal, obedient individuals remain in power. Qincheng is not merely a prison. It is a symbol of absolute authority, a warning to all those in the political system that no one is untouchable and power can be lost in an instant. Qincheng Prison is not just a high-security facility, it is a fortress of secrecy, shielded from public view and inaccessible to anyone who does not belong to China's highest levels of government. Unlike other prisons where family members, legal representatives, or human rights organizations might monitor conditions, Qincheng operates in complete isolation. Very little information ever leaks out, and those who are sent there often disappear without a trace, their fate known only to a select few within the Communist Party's inner circle. From its very design, Qincheng was built to ensure maximum secrecy. Located in the mountains outside Beijing, the prison is heavily guarded, with multiple layers of security, surveillance, and restricted access points. The facility is rumored to have sophisticated monitoring systems, with cameras and listening devices in every room, including prisoner cells. Guards and staff are sworn to absolute secrecy, and many of them undergo strict background checks and ideological training before being allowed to work at the prison. Even the legal process surrounding Qincheng prisoners is shrouded in mystery. Many detainees are arrested without formal charges, and their trials, if they even happen, are conducted behind closed doors, without public records or media coverage. Families of prisoners are often kept in the dark, sometimes only learning of their relatives' fate months or even years after their arrest. In some cases, families are never informed at all, leaving them to wonder whether their loved one is alive or dead. Unlike ordinary prisons, where inmates may receive visitors, Qincheng operates under extreme isolation protocols. Most prisoners are not allowed any contact with the outside world, not even with their closest family members. Letters, phone calls, and visits are either strictly controlled or entirely prohibited. For many detainees, this means that once they enter Qincheng, they are cut off from the world indefinitely, left to endure their sentence in complete solitude. The secrecy extends to the guards and staff as well. Those who work at Qincheng are forbidden from discussing their experiences, even after they leave their positions. Unlike typical prison guards, who may be rotated between different facilities, those assigned to Qincheng are often selected specifically for their loyalty and willingness to obey orders without question. This ensures that no unauthorized information ever leaks. Qincheng's secrecy also extends to its prison records. Unlike other detention facilities where prisoner rosters are maintained for legal and administrative purposes, Qincheng's records are believed to be highly classified, accessible only to a small group of top officials within China's security and intelligence agencies. This means that even within the government, many people do not know exactly who is imprisoned there for how long or under what conditions. This high level of secrecy is what makes Qincheng so effective as a tool of political control. The fear of disappearing into Qincheng's hidden world is often enough to keep people in line. Since information about its prisoners and their treatment is so tightly controlled, the government is free to use the facility as it sees fit, without public scrutiny or accountability. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of Qincheng's secrecy is the mystery surrounding the fate of many of its prisoners. Some high-profile detainees eventually reappear, often after publicly confessing to their supposed crimes in televised statements. Others are released in complete silence, forbidden from ever speaking about their imprisonment. But many simply vanish from history, their names erased, their existence forgotten. There are reports of prisoners dying within Qincheng's walls, their deaths unreported, their bodies disposed of without public acknowledgement. By maintaining such an airtight level of secrecy, the Chinese government ensures that Qincheng remains not just a prison, but a symbol of absolute power and control. It is a place where the powerful become powerless, where dissent is buried in silence, and where the state's authority is enforced with no questions asked. Qincheng Prison is often described as China's most luxurious prison, but this reputation is deeply misleading. While it is true that some high-ranking prisoners have been granted better living conditions compared to ordinary Chinese detention facilities, this so-called luxury comes with an even greater cost: complete psychological control, isolation, and a slow, systematic erosion of the human spirit. The prison is designed not just to punish, but to break its inmates, ensuring that those who enter never again pose a threat to the ruling government. Unlike China's regular prison system, where inmates are often subjected to overcrowded cells and forced labor, Qincheng follows a different model of punishment, one built on isolation, silence, and psychological warfare. Each prisoner is typically kept in solitary confinement, housed in a small, windowless cell with minimal human contact. The walls are often painted white, the lighting is constant, and the environment is deliberately designed to disorient and exhaust the prisoner. There is no sense of time, no exposure to the outside world, and no communication with other inmates. Food in Qincheng is strictly controlled, and while it may be better in quality than the rations given to common prisoners, it is often bland, repetitive, and nutritionally minimal. Reports from former inmates suggest that meals consist of simple rice, vegetables, and small portions of meat, just enough to sustain life, but lacking in variety. Some prisoners, especially those deemed high risk, are subjected to dietary restrictions as a form of control, with food intake reduced to weaken them physically and mentally. Medical care within Qincheng is another area where control is used as punishment. While the prison has medical facilities, access to treatment is selective. Some prisoners, particularly those who still hold political value, may receive adequate health care, but others are left to suffer untreated illnesses. Denying or delaying medical attention serves as an additional form of pressure, a reminder that survival itself is dependent on absolute obedience. One of the most harrowing aspects of life in Qincheng is the psychological torment that prisoners endure. Since most inmates are kept in extreme isolation, they have no way of knowing what is happening in the outside world. Their families, their careers, and their legacies are often erased, leaving them to wonder if they have been completely forgotten. Some prisoners are subjected to constant surveillance, with cameras monitoring their every move, making even the smallest personal action feel like a violation. In some cases, prisoners are forced to write confessions, not just once, but repeatedly, until their words match the government's version of events. This process can take months or even years, with inmates pressured to admit to crimes they may not have committed, sometimes in exchange for slightly better treatment. Others are subjected to long interrogations, where sleep deprivation, stress positions, and psychological manipulation are used to break their will. The prison also employs a system of reward and punishment to control prisoners. Those who comply with the authorities, show remorse, or cooperate with interrogations may be given small privileges, such as extra reading material, slightly better food, or brief walks outside their cells. However, any sign of defiance results in severe consequences, such as prolonged isolation, food deprivation, or harsher restrictions on movement. For those imprisoned at Qincheng, the most crushing aspect is the uncertainty. There is often no clear sentence, no end date, and no guarantee of release. Some prisoners are kept for decades, while others disappear without explanation. This lack of control over their own fate leads many to mental deterioration, as the slow passage of time erodes their sense of identity and hope. While Qincheng may not be known for physical torture in the same way as some of China's harsher prisons, the psychological impact of prolonged isolation, uncertainty, and control is equally devastating. The prison is not designed to rehabilitate, it is designed to erase. By the time prisoners leave, if they ever do, they are often broken, silenced, and stripped of any remaining influence. For those who manage to leave Qincheng Prison, freedom is often an illusion. Their release does not mean they are truly free. It simply marks the beginning of a new phase of control, surveillance, and erasure. The Chinese government ensures that former prisoners remain powerless, voiceless, and permanently excluded from public life. Many of them are forced into a silent exile within their own country, constantly watched and unable to reconnect with the world they once knew. One of the most immediate consequences for former Qincheng prisoners is the complete destruction of their reputation and social status. Whether they were high-ranking officials, influential intellectuals, or military leaders, their imprisonment serves as an unspoken death sentence for their career and legacy. The Chinese government actively rewrites history, ensuring that these individuals are remembered only as criminals, traitors, or corrupt figures, even if their only crime was falling out of political favor. Their names disappear from books, their achievements are erased, and their existence is quietly removed from the official record. For many, public life is no longer an option. They are banned from holding any political or government positions, forbidden from speaking to the media, and cut off from any form of influence. Some are placed under de facto house arrest, confined to their homes and monitored around the clock. Others face constant harassment, with security forces following them, tapping their phones, and ensuring they do not associate with former allies or journalists. Financial ruin is another key consequence. Many Qincheng prisoners have their assets seized, their bank accounts frozen, and their wealth stripped away. Even if they were once among the political elite, they often leave prison with nothing. This is a deliberate tactic to ensure they cannot rebuild their influence, as financial independence would allow them to regain some degree of power. Instead, they are left dependent on government-approved sources of support, which further ensures their compliance. The government also targets the families of former prisoners, using them as an additional form of control. Relatives may face employment restrictions, social stigma, or even surveillance, making it nearly impossible for them to live normal lives. Children of former prisoners are often barred from prestigious universities or high-ranking jobs as a way to prevent any future resurgence of the prisoner's influence. The entire family is essentially punished for the supposed crimes of one person, ensuring that the prisoner's downfall extends beyond their own life. Some former prisoners are eventually forced to make public confessions or statements of loyalty to the Communist Party as a condition for their release. These confessions, often made under duress, serve as both a final humiliation and a warning to others. By appearing on state media and admitting their supposed wrongdoings, these individuals are forced to legitimize their own persecution, reinforcing the government's narrative and deterring others from speaking out. For those who attempt to escape China after their release, the situation remains precarious. The Chinese government has a long reach, and many former prisoners who flee abroad find themselves under surveillance, harassment, or even threats to their safety. Some face pressure from Chinese authorities to remain silent, while others discover that their past imprisonment makes them targets for both political and economic restrictions in foreign countries. In many ways, exile is simply another type of prison, one without bars but with just as much control. Even if a former prisoner does not face direct persecution, the psychological scars of Qincheng remain. Years of isolation, interrogation, and uncertainty take a deep toll, and many former inmates suffer from severe PTSD, depression, and paranoia. The knowledge that they are still being watched, still being controlled, and still unable to speak freely ensures that they never fully recover. Ultimately, leaving Qincheng Prison does not mean escaping its grasp. The prison may have walls, but its influence extends far beyond them. Whether through social ostracization, financial ruin, surveillance, or forced silence, the Chinese government ensures that those who have spent time in Qincheng never again pose a threat. It is a system designed not just to punish, but to erase individuals from history, ensuring that their voices and their stories are never heard again.